The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcasts. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Bradley. Bradley's going to tell us where and when he was born. He's going to describe what it's like where he grew up and the schools he went to and the education that he received. So, Bradley, you're in the room.
Great. It looks like I'm in the pub.
Hey, yep, do like a drink myself.
Great.
Nice drop of spice rum goes down a treat.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. I really like what you're doing with the idea of leaving a legacy. It's important. And like you had just said off the air, I wish I had more from people who are no longer here who can't tell me their stories anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great shame, really. But if we don't tell our stories, they'll be lost like generations beforehand that didn't have the opportunity to use this platform to leave that legacy. So where were you born and when were you born?
I was born in 1968 it's called Van Nuys, California. It's a suburb of Los Angeles. It's kind of funny because the name is technically Dutch name, and now I'm in the Netherlands all these years later. Born outside of Los Angeles in a leafy suburb of big city LA, and had a really nice upbringing there with playing baseball in the streets and painting bases on the corner. And looking back, I gotta say it was good growing up. I had a good,
so that
time.
area of California then was like the summer of love, was it?
It was. It was really a wonderful, loving place to grow up. And yes, and in the 70s as well. I mean, I went to some preschool that was super lovey-dovey, hippie. And I mean, I'm 5 years old. What do I know? But I know it was lovey-dovey. So, hey, that's all you really need at 5 years old anyway. So
getting plenty of love at 5 years old, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I bet he was a cheeky little baby as well.
Well, it's funny. I think I was, yes, but also quite shy, especially up until like fourth grade. I think I cried every day the first day of school until fourth grade in the States, which is what, you're maybe 7 years old or something. And that took a long time to get over. Just resisting change, not wanting anything to change. I see that now in my own kids, how tough it is.
So you started off in sort of the kindergarten type school, and then what was your first memories of school? I mean, you're crying an awful lot up until you were 7.
Yeah, it's interesting about memories, and that's another reason I'm so happy you're doing these interviews, these recounts of your life to record them, because I sometimes I'm not clear whether or not I'm remembering it or whether I'm remembering a photo from a photo album. But I do remember specifically in kindergarten learning how to square dance. And it's I don't know if square dancing is a thing outside of the United States, but it's
a bit of a hoedown, was it?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, very sort of country style, simple, going around sort of in circles, or I guess squares. And and just being okay with it and dancing and having no fear. I guess once I got over crying the first day, I adapted better. And just that joy of just dancing and together with your friends and in the little school, it's really nice. It's one of the first.
That's one of your first memories. So moving on slightly, then going to your first sort of, I guess it's from kindergarten you go to junior school, is it? In the States?
Elementary or grammar school, and then on to junior high school. Although you were talking about the 70s, because back then there was especially in Los Angeles, they were going to change the busing, since they were going to integrate schools and bus kids all over the place. And so that was going to be better or worse for you, depending on where you were living. And my mom was quite the activist back then. And so if you were already bused somewhere, then you wouldn't have had to be forcibly bused, because they were just going to force bus you wherever they wanted, right? Wherever they felt best. And my mom,
And
the
these are the
activist.
big yellow things that you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
in films
exactly.
and
Yes.
stuff.
The big yellow things. Yes. I spent a lot of hours of my youth in those big yellow things because my mom, seeing that this was going to happen and not wanting her kids to go to some terrible school, which is definitely a possibility, she's like, I'm going to proactively jump on this, and I'm going to force my kids this year to be bused, and so that next year they won't be chosen to be bused because, oh, those kids are already being bused. But this, if you do it now, then she chooses her school. And so that's what she did. She even gathered up a group of like 30 kids and said, hey, this is the deal. Let's get this bus. Let's force our kids to this good school for the next few years. And then we'll prevent them being chosen to go to some bad school. Right. So interesting. Also, speaking of like proactive, how you can proactively change your future if you take action. And that's really what she did. So it's actually interesting. I went to a school. I was from the San Fernando Valley, and so again, my mom voluntarily sent us to this school in East Los Angeles. And our bus, we were the only white kids in the whole school. And so, but the school had this sort of, it's called a magnet program. I don't even know what that means, but it was a good school educationally, academically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great school. It was a really interesting school. So my early years there we were the only white kids in the whole school, and it was Hispanic and Black and a lot of Asian, and all my friends were all Hispanic and Black and Asian growing up, and our little white school bus, and we got made fun
So,
of. We got beaten up, and we didn't want to win the basketball game after because we might get beaten up, and we learned pretty quickly how to deal with it, and it was good. It was a really good learning experience. I think I learned a lot from that later on.
I guess racism wasn't as prevalent in California as it would have been sort of in the deep south. But did you experience that
No,
sort of
I mean,
racism from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think that was a really interesting element of my youth because we were the minority in that school, and so I got to learn what it was like to be in the minority, and that was a real learning experience. And as a white male today, I don't know how you even talk about that because this is like the reverse, but I got a taste then, right?
Yeah.
And what it was like, and I learned a lot from it, and I think it's helped me in my perspective for the rest of my life. But yeah,
I suppose
there was racism, but not. I don't know. I don't remember it being so bad. It was just different. We were just different kids, but we still played basketball together.
Yeah. Can they call it racism if it's against white people? Or is it only racism if it's against Black people?
Yeah, I don't know. And this is where also today, I don't know the answer. And there's such a fine line there. And that's why I feel also as a, white male, can I even say this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's you tend to say the white majority tend to be the victims nowadays. And they're the ones that are the racists. But in effect, it's a minority that tend to be the racists that I found, particularly in the UK. I mean, you see it all the time on the television. It's the supposedly black minority that are calling the white majority the racists when it's the boot's on the other foot, I think. But
yeah, but historically, right?
Yeah.
Then from the bigger picture perspective, if we go back to slavery, and then it's clear the way it used to be. And so that's why, again, from the white male perspective, I have a hard time even talking about this because where do I stand? Where am I supposed to stand? And so that's why it was interesting for me back then to be on that white bus and being the only white kids in the whole school. So yeah, I think it gave me a different perspective, more open perspective on what it's like to be a minority. And again, I don't know, we're so politically correct sometimes. So I live in the Netherlands, right? Which is, I think, more direct and less sort of politically correct. Because I'm American. I used to live in the States, and there I feel like even talking about this right now, it's kind of uncomfortable. I'm kind of like, wow, am I saying the wrong thing? And sometimes you know what I mean? It's hard sometimes. Like I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend the wrong people. But it's just my story, so I don't know how else to tell my story. That was it.
So let's move off of that subject then.
Yeah, let's move along here. We're going to dig ourselves into a quagmire.
So what did you do after that school? So that first year you were bused across town to this predominantly black and Asian school.
Yeah,
you were the only white kids in it. What happened the following year?
Okay, you want to know?
Did you stay in that school? Or did
we did. We stayed. I graduated elementary school from there, but then things got even more interesting because then I went back to my neighborhood and went to the local high school or the local junior high school. But then I was messing around too much in school, too much chitter chatter and having too much fun and goofing off. And so my mom was going again. My mom, the activist, right? She's like, okay, this isn't working out. You're a smart kid and you're goofing off too much. You're going to screw it all up. And so she said, I want you to go to this different school. I said, oh, okay. A private school. And back then private schools weren't super expensive like they are today, but it was private, Catholic, all boys. And I was previously in a not private, not Catholic, not all boys school. And I'm like, Mom, why? Please no. And but sure enough, she did, right?
Yeah. I mean, did she tell you that it was all your own fault?
Oh, probably. Who knows? It's for your own good. But it's interesting. So looking back, right? We just talked about how we were the only white kids on this bus, and we were talking about being different and being a minority. Well, that elementary school experience was nothing compared to being at the Catholic school, because at the Catholic school, so now I'm coming in like 9th and 10th grade. I'm 12, 13, 14 years old. And in Catholic schools in the States, most of the kids are Catholic for one, and I was not Catholic. So I've already got, a mark against me. And then they go to school together from like kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So they are 12, 13 years. They're all together that whole time. And then, so here comes public school boy from, the outcast. Again, the outcast comes in. And that was so much harder being in that. I was such an outcast. It was terrible. It was really hard. It was a really hard period for me to try to fit in. And I basically did not fit in. I failed at fitting in. Sure, I made some friends. And in fact, the friends I made, I kept for a long time. Maybe because we were sort of the outcasts, I don't know. But going into that private Catholic school, man, that was tougher than anything at that point.
So did you have to learn the old spectacles, testicles, wallet and watch job? Did you have to do that anymore?
I was. Well, there was another place where I felt inferior. I hadn't grown up very religious, not religious at all. Church at Christmas, maybe. And so here I am again, another mark against me because I don't know the religion. So it's funny, even, it's really interesting what you're doing, talking about people's lives. And as I think back, I'm like, wow, how did I even survive that?
Well, this is the sort of thing I try to bring out of people is their experiences as they grew up. Because if we don't highlight those experiences, it's lost, isn't it?
Yeah.
So So a difficult
you're
time.
Right. I mean, my kids. I don't know. I don't know if they know these stories. So this is really fun to bring this stuff out. So I'm really thankful for you as well to bring this stuff out and be sharing this. It's really a great idea what you're doing.
So junior high, So you're getting a pretty much of a hard time through junior high.
Yeah.
What happened to your high school?
So
Did
so
it get
then
worse?
it finally got better. So after my mom said, okay, 1 year at the private Catholic all boys school. Like, okay, fine, 1 year. And after 1 year, just one more year. I'm like, no. So, but I did it. And so I was 2 years at that school, and then finally I said, "Mom, it's just not really working out. I hate it, and it's tough and blah." And so she let me go back to the public school where I thrived and I had a great time. And so I finished off at a Los Angeles public high school, graduated from there. And then,
so you obviously learned a lesson for your goofing around
yeah,
at the Catholic school. Did they knock that out of you? Did you get an opportunity to lark about, or was it sort of fairly strict from day one and you thought, wind your neck in?
well, the Catholic school was definitely strict. It was no messing around there. But also I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't my happy-go-lucky positive self anymore. I was so scared and such an outcast that I wasn't having fun. I had no reason to goof off in class because I'm trying to. I wasn't thriving. I was surviving.
Yeah. So you moved 2 years of that sort of harsh punishment. You moved back to your original school where you were able to lark about. Did you carry on? Did you revert back to type, or had you learned your lesson and knuckled down?
Yeah, I think in the grand mature age of 16 or whatever it is, I think I got that mostly out of me, most of the goofing around, and had a good last 2 years at that high school, and graduated, but then so my parents, we were living in Los Angeles, and my parents wanted to do the typical American European summer trip. And my sister and I really didn't want to go. I wanted to go to the beach with my friends and waste away the entire summer. That was my dream. My parents were like, "No, we are forcing you to go to Europe."
European vacation, eh?
European vacation. And we didn't want to go at all. And sure enough, though, I really enjoyed it, and it really opened my eyes. And then, so this is really interesting here. If this is the third chapter here, so we had the white kid bus, then I had the non-Catholic, outcast in the church, and now I'm over in Europe where I'm also different again. Right now, I'm the American, and I'm not at home. I'm in a foreign country, and I gotta say, it was really intriguing to me. I thought, wow, this is cool. And maybe in some weird way, and it's actually funny really talking about this, in some weird way, maybe I grew to be comfortable in that outcast position. Be even to the point where I almost thought, hey, maybe I could flip this around and make it a positive thing. What if I'm the guy who I'm like right now, I'm American living in the Netherlands. I'm not normal. I'm not from here. I'm not the local guy. I haven't lived in this neighborhood for my entire life. So,
and do you speak Dutch? And
if
you do speak Dutch, do you have an American accent speaking Dutch?
I do speak Dutch. I do have an American accent, but I hear that it's not terrible. It's not the terrible American accent. Partly because then, after my parents dragged us to Europe, I just thought that's where I want to go. And it was so clear to me that I needed to go live, go back to Europe, that after that summer, the very first day of university, I start university, I go to the career counseling center and I say, I need to go to Europe. How do I get to Europe? And they say, well, you got to learn a language. I say, well, I took a little French in high school. They're like, great, do that. I'm like, great, sign me up. And so I was a mathematics major, but I said, but I need to go to Europe. So I did. I then studied some French in university, which of course for an American standard means that I don't know any French.
Well, I have pretty poor schoolboy French, and years ago, I was doing some lorry driving, and I used to. I was driving from Oslo down to Paris on a line truck most of the time, and we used to go out down to Le Mans to a factory down there, and as I pulled up, got out of the truck, I'd see the charge hand coming across the yard, and I'd shout across to him, "Bonjour, monsieur, ça va? Avez-vous chargé pour moi, pour Norvège, s'il vous plaît?" He put his hands over his ear. Please, please,
stop.
I speak English.
You're killing me.
Worked for me every time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but he did appreciate the fact that I tried to speak French.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters really. Because if you go to a country where you're not going to learn the language, at least give it a shot. Just let them know you've
Absolutely.
given it a try.
I've always found that if I can learn the basics of saying hello, thank you, please, and maybe order a drink or some food, then you're pretty good. I mean, they will appreciate the fact that you're trying.
Right.
The English is notoriously bad for learning other languages, because I guess English is the international language of the world. So it's a lot harder for us to sort of learn another language, but I tried. I mean, I spent quite a few years in Germany when I was in the army, and I used to be fairly. I could get around in German. When I was working up in Norway, I got the hang of Norwegian. I was fairly fluent in Norwegian for a couple of years, but once you stop using it, you do tend to lose it a bit. But there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So during college, then.
So then I was mostly
maths.
Yeah. So learning maths, but then I was really focused on Europe. I don't know. It's funny looking back. It was just really clear that I needed to go there. So I worked towards that. I did everything you needed to do the year abroad program.
Mm-hmm.
And then, however, so the school where I was in California, at University of California School, and their program to France was like a bubble of Americans who then go to France and live in a bubble of Americans in France. And I thought, well, that kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
if you think back to, well, it wasn't like our white bus wasn't integrated in the school. Not at all. We absolutely integrated in the school. And back in the non-Catholic in the Catholic school, well, I had to meet friends, and I tried, and I did my best, and I did, and I made friends. And so now I didn't want to be in the American bubble in France. And so I unenrolled in my University of California program, and I found a different program through Western Kentucky University. And to this day, I don't even know where this place is, but I enrolled in Western Kentucky University. Sorry, no offense, Western Kentucky University students, but I enrolled in their program because their program, I was going to be in classes in France with French people. And I thought, oh, well, that's the real deal. That's where I'm going to learn really something, right? So I might have history class, but it's going to be in French. It's not just going to be a group of Americans, learning French or something. So I'm like, oh, all right, I'm really going to integrate. And that's exactly what happened. So I did. And guess what? I really learned French that year because I'm taking economics in French. I mean, I'm failing miserably, but it was such a hardcore crash course that I really learned French like mad. And I really was integrated.
Choice, I suppose.
Yeah.
If they're only speaking French in a class and they're not making an exception for you,
exactly,
you either learn French or it goes over your head.
Exactly. And I remember hearing, and I even saw people from the program that I did not join, and they just didn't integrate as well. They didn't have the classes with the French. They had their own little bubble world. And that wasn't my choice. I really wanted to be integrated. And
so did you
it worked.
To know a lot of French people then in your class?
Yeah. Although I made even more friends with international people. And so, because in the French class, there were also other people and not from Western Kentucky. I met some of them, but I met Germans and I met Dutch and I met other people from Australians and Canadians who were also in that integrated element of the program. And so we were now all in the same boat, that we were foreigners in France, but we were more serious about really integrating and meeting people and doing our best to not be in a bubble of just the foreigners in a bubble.
Brilliant. So that was a year long that you did that. So what happened when you came back to America? I guess you came back to America.
I did come back to America, and then the very first day back in the States, I said, how do I get back to Europe again? Because I was just smitten. I just knew it. It was so clear for me that Europe was the place I wanted to be. So this makes no sense at all, but I got back to my school in California. So I had to re-enroll in my school in California. And the first day back, I started taking German. And maybe it's because I had a German girlfriend in France, but I think that had something to do with it.
It might have a lot to do with it.
It might have a lot to do with it, yes.
Anyway, can I just wind you back just a fraction?
Yeah.
That holiday that you were forced to Europe, you were forced on a family vacation.
Yeah.
What countries did you visit? That's I missed that bit. Where did you go that inspired you to want to go back to Europe?
Well, I think one thing I really enjoyed was the train travel. Especially in the Western United States, we really don't have train travel. And so we had the typical Eurail pass thing for a month. And we did the typical American, way too many countries in way too few days. I think it was all the way from, Greece to Amsterdam and everything in between. And I think it was 6 weeks or something. And I was just in love with train travel and at all these different, typical American perspective on Europe. I thought, wow, all these countries are so accessible and relatively smaller. And wow, it's so different from one border to the next. And I'm on a train and an hour later, I'm in a different country, different language, different food, different people. Like, this is just fascinating for me. I was so in love with Europe, and I still am to this day.
Yeah.
So
brilliant.
Yeah.
So let's wind back forward. Now we've got that out of the way.
so then I graduate. I learned German, and now I'm just super focused. Oh, and by the way, while in France, I came back to my school and they said, well, you are a maths degree, but you have so many units for French. You could graduate with a French degree easily. And what do you want to do? And I said, so silly. I said, like, well, what am I going to do with math? Well, that's a waste of time. I want to go back to Europe. So I'm like, I'll just do the French degree. And so I did. So I graduated with a French degree. Also, because all I wanted to do was go back to Europe. So I said, oh, who cares about math? And sure enough, I learned German for the girlfriend, I guess. And then the day after I graduated, I didn't waste time. I remember this. The day after graduation from university, I moved to Germany. And I had set up a program, a work exchange program type thing in some massive like giant company. They make they're earth movers, who knows what they did, but I had this, all I cared was that I was there and I had a program. I made a little bit of money, I had a housing, and I was in, and it was sort of like the French school, because now I'm in a German job where I have to speak German all day, and my German was not that great, but guess whose German got great in 3 months? So then I was in Germany, and now I'm living the dream. I'm barely making enough money to survive, but I don't care at all because I'm in Europe. I'm just so happy that I'm here.
Whereabouts in Germany were you?
It's awful place. It was called, sorry for those people, Duisburg. It's the Ruhrgebiet. It's really industrial. Yeah, Duisburg.
That's right on the border. That's Duisburg. It's right on the German-Dutch border. Been through there a few times as well.
Yeah,
coming out of Aachen to Duisburg.
Yeah,
and then and then on to Cologne.
Yeah,
On
right. Yeah, it's right
on
there.
the E4, I think. Is the E4? The A4.
Yeah,
motorway.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And then, and so I'm in this, industrial town working for this giant industrial, conglomerate. I have no idea, what's going on. I'm just happy to be there and happy to be legal and have a job and be working and planning my next move. And my move, all I cared about was how do I stay in Europe? How do I stay in Europe? And at that point, so I had another like practicum, another practical work experience thing. Then I went to school. You can always go to school. Countries will have you if you go to school because you're bringing money into the country, so they'll let you go to school anywhere. So I went to, the wall had just come down, the Berlin Wall,
89.
and so I went in like 91. I went to a school in East Germany for 1 month in Chemnitz. The town was formerly called Karl Marxstadt.
Yeah.
And now called Chemnitz. And I chose I look back at this stuff and I think, like, what was I thinking? But why would I put myself through this? But again, I do the oddball move. Again, I'm the total outcast, stranger, weirdo who's the American who's in East Germany learning German. That the Berlin Wall came down, half an hour ago, and I go into East Germany to learn German for a month. I'm a total nutcase. So
I mean, East German is a lot different to West German.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, the dialects, just for a start, are different.
Yeah,
I mean, my experience, I was in Berlin from 1978 to 80, and
wow.
When we went through Checkpoint Charlie to go into East Berlin to do flag tours and stuff like that, for us it was just like going from a colour film to a black and white film. And
yes, exactly.
And when we used to drive from Potsdam down to Brunswick through East Germany was grey. I don't know whether you felt the same when you
absolutely
went from west to Chemnitz, or Carl's what's his face?
Karl Marxstadt,
Karl Marxstadt, and
but that's exactly how you describe it is perfect.
Yeah,
Everything's so sort of
agricultural in East Germany. It looks as though it's bodged rather than made properly.
Yeah.
So it looks cheap and nasty.
Yeah, exactly. That was it was strange. It was strange times.
Yeah. So, how did you get on in East Berlin or East Germany?
Yeah, I mean, well, I again
welcomed with open arms, being American.
I wore, gray overcoats and tried to fit in with the gray overcast. It was pretty dreary, and it was November, and it was the sun goes down at 4 p.m. and it's cold and wet, and I loved it. I was just so happy to be in Europe, and I was and in fact, that's just that clear focus of this is what I want to do. It allowed me to achieve whatever I wanted to do because my focus was so clear.
Okay,
so
move on then. Let's see what we're getting to. So you've done your month in Chemnitz.
Yeah.
What did you do after that?
And so during this time, and remember, this is like 90, 91, 92, right? This is way pre-internet, right? Yeah. So no internet, and I've got to figure out a way to find internships or jobs or schools or something. And that often meant literally, I mean, I know my kids today would say, you did what? Write a letter in an envelope with a stamp and mail it to a company to apply for a job or something. And so, I found another one. I found another internship, and I did that. And then I said, okay, the internships are going to end at some point. How can I? And my fascination with Europe was still just growing. It wasn't dwindling. I knew it. I just wanted to live here. And so I started asking, how can I stay here? How can I stay here longer term? How can I not just be this temporary student? How can I sort of live and work here? How do I make that happen? And there was sort of three options. There was, because I only have an American passport, I could go work for a big US firm and hope they send me overseas someday. Or I could apply to work at a European firm and see how that goes. Or number three was earn a recognizable degree, educational academic degree that's recognized in Europe, then get hired by a European firm. So the first one was going to take too long. The second one, I actually tried that. It was really hard and I failed miserably to try to get a job there. And then the third one, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do that. And so not that I'm such a business guy, but based on schooling, I looked at MBA schools, Masters of Business Administration in Europe. And I said, because that will then ideally lead me to a job in Europe where then I can live and work in Europe. And so that's what I did. And it was down to Manchester, England, Barcelona, Spain, and Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Those were my three top schools. And in the end, it was Rotterdam that won out, partly because it was, I was pretty young to go to an MBA. Looking back, I should have had more work experience. That would have been more beneficial. But the school was longer, a 2-year program. And it was very international based. And because they also said, if I go to school in Manchester, I'm probably going to live and work in England. If I go to school in Barcelona, I'm probably going to live and work in Spain. But the sort of the appeal of the Dutch one was that they were much more international. Like maybe I could go to any place after that. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that one. And also back in France, this school abroad, I also had a Dutch girlfriend, and I had been to Holland quite a bit, and I liked that. And so, so I went to, I applied and went back to the States, and I applied for the MBA programs, and I got in, and I went to, I did a 2-year MBA program in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, which was fantastic.
So who funded this then?
So it's interesting. So
an international student, they want money.
Yep. So it's interesting. My American nieces from my American sister are here right now. She just left last night, and they were visiting. She was visiting in the Netherlands. They are doing this abroad program in Italy, and they go to school in the States and we were even talking about tuition, and tuition in the United States for university is astronomically insane. It's crazy. And the rest of the world, I mean, the rest of the world just says like, what is that all about? And sometimes it's maybe worth it. I don't know. I'm pretty biased on this topic, but school in Europe is a whole lot cheaper. So this program in the Netherlands was cheap. It was cheaper than my undergrad education in the States. I mean, by a long shot. It really wasn't that expensive. And so looking back, I had saved some money, and I think my parents helped me out a bit. But honestly, it wasn't very expensive. I mean, nothing like the prices today. So it wasn't crazy by any means. And then, of course, the idea is that you're going to get a job that pays well afterwards. So, investment. And sure enough, I did. I went to school there in Rotterdam for 2 years. And then I got a job as hoped, as planned, in Amsterdam. I was just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I got a job, good job afterwards, and worked there for 2 years and lived in Amsterdam. And I was living the life, and I was legally working. I was making an income. I wasn't a total outcast, just tourist visiting anymore. I was a real local, and it was just, I did it. I achieved it.
So that's where you learned Dutch.
Yeah. And similar to the France story, and as you said, because our native language is English, people want to learn English from us. And the Dutch, their English is already excellent, but they said, oh, cool, an American. And I was the first and only foreigner in this company. Are we seeing a trend here that I'm always the outcast, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
You
the
know how to
first,
isolate yourself then.
yeah, yeah. So I'm the first and only foreigner in this company. And I told them, I said, hey guys, I know you all want to, because they would tell me, oh, good, we're going to practice English with you. I said, no, if you practice English with me, I'm never going to learn Dutch. So I said, I'm really sorry, but I need to learn Dutch. So sorry, I'm not going to speak English with you. I need to learn Dutch. And so I did. And I learned Dutch quickly because I was so stubborn that I only spoke Dutch. And having lived in Germany and I spoke German, and Dutch is similar enough to German that Dutch came pretty quickly to me.
Mm.
And
So you
then,
spend a lot of time spitting on the floor then.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't speak Flemish, but I do get quite a bit of phlegm.
so,
Yeah.
This firm then. So you were there for 2 years.
Yeah, so 2 years of school and then 2 years of the whole corporate job, suit and tie and everything, which was funny because that was very unlike me. And I knew it wasn't me, but again, the
Unlike
goal
Dutch
was.
as well. I mean,
And what?
the Dutch aren't really known for being smart, snazzy dressers. So you're wearing a suit
Well,
and tie in a Dutch company.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
unusual.
yeah.
Normally it's all jeans and a
You're right. You're
casual.
right. But this was the 90s, and
Yeah,
it was a little less formal. I mean, I'm sorry, less casual back then, I
yeah.
suppose. No, it was definitely suit and tie, which it was not my cup of tea, suit and tie, but I did it. Then,
A
wow,
couple of years there.
a couple of years there. Then I met a Dutch girl, and I'm really seeing the trends here. I'm the outcast, and then I follow the love. And but it's not bad, not a bad plan actually.
So you're generally ruled by your heart rather than your head then.
That's it. You just summed it up.
You just go with your heart rather than your head. You don't think these things through properly, do you?
No, you're absolutely right. It's their heart-based decisions. I just wanted to live in Europe. I don't care where I was or what I was doing or how much money I had, as long as I was in Europe. And then with her, I just wanted to be with her. And so for example, we then were talking about traveling, and we wanted to, we should travel together and get to know each other better. And we thought, we'll go a weekend in Belgium. Let's go a week to France. And we kept building up this travel plan, and it got completely out of hand. We were both real travelers, and that's really where our heart was, traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up both quitting our jobs, selling everything we had, and we went around the world for a year together, the two of us. And back to funding this, and this is like late 90s, funding the trip around the world. And we're talking backpack, super cheapy travel, right? That trip cost me, our budget monthly was $1,000 together.
Mm.
So over that 12-month, it was 12-month trip. So maybe 12,000. I mean, try to live on $12,000 in most countries in the world these days.
Yeah.
And
almost impossible
these days. Yeah. And so it was cheaper for me. It sounds ridiculous, but it was cheaper for me to travel around the world than to stay and work at my corporate job.
Bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on that trip, so now I had been in Europe then. I did the France, I did the Germany, I did the Netherlands. I had been in Europe for about 7 years. And on that trip with my girlfriend, we thought, I've been in Europe for 7 years. You've lived in the Netherlands your whole life. We said, hey, maybe we should go to the States for a year. Check it out. And so we did.
17 years later.
Yeah. 17 years later, we were still in the States, and married, careers, mortgages, kids, the whole thing, all in San Francisco, California, where we went. And then 17 years in the States. And then just 6 years ago now, we kind of had the reverse thing. We said, hey, we've been here a long time. You're Dutch. By the way, we only speak Dutch with our kids. And that was, again, with language guy here, I thought it was really important that my kids learned Dutch from birth.
Yeah.
We only spoke Dutch at home, and my Dutch at that point was very good. My Dutch is very good today.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, let's go back to the Netherlands just for 1 year, just for like a sabbatical experiment year.
Yeah.
And that was 6 years ago, and we're still here. So I'm done predicting the future because I'm apparently not very good at it.
So how are the kids? Did you bring the kids over with you? Are they school
Oh,
age, or are they grown up?
Yeah, they were 10 and 12, which was a little bit too late. Probably 8 and 10 would have been better, because like especially the 12-year-old, he's had his roots a bit in the States pretty deeply at that point. And still to this day, he's 18. Still to this day, his heart is a lot in the States. My younger son, 16, his heart is digging the roots here now. So wouldn't be surprised if my 18-year-old goes back to the States, and the younger 16-year-old, he's really loving Europe. So we'll see.
I mean, he could go back there to university or go back there and join the military, and then the military will pay for his education.
Yeah, he could. He could go back there, and I want to have it open for both of them.
Yeah.
So and like me, I don't dare say you have to stay in one place. I sure didn't. So, in fact, that's what I want them to do. I want them to go where they want to go.
Go and explore.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings you right up to date then.
Yeah.
So let's just wind it back slightly. So that year you were going to spend in America, that turned into 17.
Yeah.
What did you do all that time? Did you stay in a one company? Did you move about? Obviously, you married, had the kids.
Yeah. So at that point, and again, I think with the geographical moves, you then allow yourself like a psychological move as well, or a change. And so for me, especially moving countries or continents, I feel like, oh, good, I'm allowed to now almost become a different person. And so remember, I'm in suit and tie working at the IT consultancy back in Amsterdam, where I'm not comfortable in my suit and tie. And I know this about myself. But I'm making money, I'm doing the corporate thing, but I know that's not really me. But then, so after 1 year of traveling around the world, I say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna become my real self now, and I'm gonna be who I really want to be. Which since that time in France, I always wanted to be a writer, and I thought, okay, well, this is the time. We're starting fresh in the States, and this is an opportunity for me to become who I believe I should be, and as a writer. And so we arrive in San Francisco, which is one of the most expensive cities in the States. That was a bit of an eye opener. And here I want to be a writer. Well, I should really have chosen. I wish my heart was in banking or something that actually made money, but there wasn't. And so I actually do. I'm right. I'm in a writers group in San Francisco. I'm writing away, and I even wrote a book. And I was writing articles for magazines and newspapers and doing great, but it's a tough racket, the writing job, to actually make money. And again, with like the heart decision and the mind decision, it was, again, I'm going by the heart. The heart is, I want to be a writer, but the mind was like, hey, you got to pay rent. And so I was not making the rent with the writing. And back when on our world travels, I was in Hanoi in Vietnam, and in some cafe, and I'm reading a Business Week magazine. And in this magazine, it talks about this new business where if you have a bit of business savvy and you're good at languages, you can go work at this company and create names for companies and products. So it was a naming company. Sort of like branding, but naming. All they do is create names for companies. And they said, our ideal candidate is a linguist with an MBA. I'm like, that's me. That's me. So I even tear out this article from this Business Week magazine. Who knows? An article might have been years old.
Yeah.
And some of these companies happen to be in the San Francisco area. So I go to this company and I say, here's this article I read. The person you're looking for is me. And I basically got the job with that story. I mean, it was true also. Of course, I was a linguist with an MBA, and I got the job. And so I worked for a naming company and that was how I paid the rent in San Francisco. And it was fun work too. The work, it really was creative work. And we created names for products and companies. And again, this is like the boom of the early 2000s with Silicon Valley going crazy. And there's new companies popping up all the time, and they needed new names. So we were the creative team that created the new names. So, but at that point though, then my dream of writing was falling away. And because I'm getting into the reality of, making money and paying rent and all that reality check stuff. So the writing was falling away, and that I wasn't happy about that. But we have kids, we have house, we have all the reality stuff, right? So that was a real hard balance for me. And the balance was getting out of balance. I was doing too much of the work I didn't enjoy doing, and then not doing the work that I knew where my heart was. Yeah. So 17 years later, we want to go back to Europe because I want the kids to I want them to learn Dutch. I want them to have a different environment than only American, because that's all they had. And I missed Europe. I said, hey, we've been here 17 years. It's time to move. And the kids were 10 and 12. So it was sort of then or never. And then again, with the idea of moving geographically, and I can move psychologically or emotionally even, and allow myself to then do something different. Because I was done with I had my own company at this point, sort of like a design marketing agency thing. It was okay, but I was really just sick of it because I knew my heart was with writing. Yeah. So it didn't matter what I was doing or how much money I was making. My heart wasn't in it. And I wasn't going to last longer. I was going to burn out or freak out or, have a heart attack or who knows. I wasn't happy. And so with that move back to the Netherlands, I then allowed myself to change path again. And I finished that company from the States, and I said, now I'm going to be a writer. And that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years.
Wow.
So finally allowed myself. I started all over the map. I started writing just anything, just because I felt like I had so much built up over the years that I was not writing. I just exploded with, you couldn't stop me from writing at that point. And now I mostly focus on, it's very much what we're talking about. It's change in your life and how to achieve. If you think you're not being that person you think you should be, how can you make it happen? And what can be the actual steps and the action and the daring that it takes? Because there's sacrifice as well, right? I mean, I'm writing, but am I making the money I was with my old company? Nope. Do I care? Nope. Am I happier? Yep. And so there's that balance again. What's happier? What do you want? Do you want money and frustration, or do you want joy and maybe less money? Where are your priorities? Where are you going to make the sacrifice? And so that's a lot what I write about, is how to, like the subtitle of my main book is, who will you be next? Who's your next chapter? Because I don't believe that, like, I'm not the corporate IT guy in a suit and tie anymore. That was a chapter of my life, and I'm done with that. And I don't regret it. I did it. I didn't love it, but it was just a chapter of my life, and that's okay. And I can change.
Absolutely.
So that's
and a person like you that's ruled by your heart and not your head, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I guess it generally has all fallen into place for you. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm so much happier now doing what I want to do. And now back, we talk about balance and finances and stuff. I do have a harder time. Let me put it this way. I wish I made more money from the heart jobs and work and decisions. But the thing about them is that I'm going to do them anyway. Like the writing of the books, it's a heart action. I do it because it makes me happy. I do it because I love it. I don't do it for the money. And so, okay, if that's the case, but do I call it a hobby? And then I work at the bank the rest of my life? I'm like, well, I'm not going to go that far on the extreme.
No.
And so how can I kind of balance it out where I can still make a living and pay the rent, but then do my heart-based actions enough to keep me happy? And the trick is the balance, of course. If I made loads of money in my books and everything, then that'd be great too.
I'm sure it'll come eventually.
Yeah. And it's there. But and now where I'm having the most fun is really, so there was a period back in San Francisco where I was not writing and I was not happy about it. And I had, big dreams in my head of what it was, that how my life should be and how my dream future life. And yet I wasn't taking any action towards them. And it's partly, perfectionism and like analysis paralysis and imposter syndrome. Who am I to think that I could do that stuff? And so I thought about it and dreamt about it, but I didn't take action towards it. And a lot of it is what I hear so much is this idea of you want your first book or your first project or your first album that you record as a singer, as a band. You want that to be the greatest thing of all time. And in my experience, it's yes, of course that's possible, but the probability is not great. And so what if instead of working towards your best book ever, which is your first book ever, instead of working towards your best book ever, why don't we work on your worst book ever first and make it terrible? And it's going to be awful. And the cover is going to be horrendous. And the story is going to be terrible. Yeah. And just let's get that out of the way, because the process of going through the steps of writing this worst book ever is going to clean that out of your system. It's like, you're getting the carburetor, let's go drive 100 miles an hour for an hour in your car. And that's going to clean out the pipes. That's going to get the pistons working better. Right? Whereas if your car is just parked in the garage, your pristine car that you actually never drive because it's your dream car, well, what good is that doing you?
Absolutely.
So that's actually the program I'm doing right now. And it's called How to Write Your Worst Book Ever. And it's a lot about getting over yourself, just taking action and sort of opening up and laughing with yourself, but even at yourself, and making that okay. And then really. So that's where really, and what's fun about it is that it's fun. It's so fun working with people on their worst book, because all of the pressure is gone of the society and your book has to be award winning and you have to make $1 million euros in a weekend and you have blah blah, all these high expectations, they're just gone, and all the societal pressures are gone. And I mean, I even have a joke that I tell the participants in the group. I say, okay, here's the conversation you're going to have. You ready? Okay, here we go. You're in a pub and somebody says, oh, I heard you're working on a book. How is it? And you say, it's terrible. and they say, excuse me? It's like, no, really, it's so bad. Let me tell you about it. And if you think about this, I can't even say this without laughing, right? Because it's so silly, but it's so powerful. Because if you, especially some participants we've had, they're like, wow, thank you so much, because I got over myself. I got over this big image of this fantastico, magnificent masterpiece and me, the maestro of all literature
Yeah.
ever. And
The next
now how,
J.K. Rowling,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and you're not.
And you're not,
Brilliant.
and you probably never will be, because there's not too many of her. And so why bother? Why bother not taking action and only dreaming your dream? And let's take some silly action to break through, to like unclog the carburetor, to unclog the drain, and just get it out of you. And then I can almost guarantee you your second book or your second project or your second whatever it is you're working on is going to be better. You've got that crap out of the way.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really passionate about these days, because also I don't want people wasting. I mean, I think I counted like 9 years in San Francisco when I was not doing, I wasn't doing the heart thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing what I believed in, what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it sucks the life out of you.
It does.
Yeah.
I believe in that you've got one life and you have to live it, and you live every day as though it's your last.
Yeah.
And if when you die, you can say, I've had a great life and one of my own choosing.
Yeah.
Then you ain't going to be far wrong.
Yeah. And so what if on your deathbed you say, oh, I sure wish I had written that perfect book, but I never actually wrote anything. Well, I think that's more painful than, hey, I even if you only write your worst book ever and you're on your deathbed, you say, you know what? I did it. I wrote that book. It was so bad. It was terrible. I said, you know what? But I did it though.
I did it. Yeah.
And exactly what you're doing with your program here. Maybe your book is a fictional story of your life. Maybe your book is a self-help book for something you're good at. It doesn't, whatever, but it's going to be something of a legacy that you're leaving behind because you created something.
That's it.
It wasn't just, I watched Netflix or I listened to this or I learned that. That's all intake and input. I mean, that's really easy too. Sit on the couch and watch Netflix. That's super easy.
Yeah.
But creating, like what you're doing, you're creating. You got to, get out of bed, get the camera going, get the mic ready, and you're creating. That is so much more rewarding than anything you receive.
Yep.
So you could have create your worst podcast ever. This is not your first podcast. You've been doing this for how many seasons now, right?
Couple of years now.
Yeah, a couple of years now. And if you look back, and if you wanted that first episode to be the most perfect episode of all time, maybe you never would have even started.
Yeah. But there you go. That's us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bradley. That's been real fascinating. I love your story. It is truly inspirational.
Great. Oh, I'm happy to hear it. Well, yours is too. I think really what you're doing, I think what we're both doing, it's this idea of this legacy. And it's exactly like you said, if you don't tell it, then
it's lost.
It's lost, and it could be lost forever. If you die with your own story, it's gone. So thank you very much for doing this.
It's a pleasure.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.